こんにちは。今日のスピーキングを始めます。Modern physical anthropology. A major shift in the approach to physical anthropology occurred at the beginning of the 20th century with the discovery of genetic principles and of the AB of blood groups. Genetics was actually rediscovered in 1865, and Austrian monk Gregor Mendel had formulated the first laws of heredity and laid the foundation of the science of genetics. His findings were almost entirely ignored at the time. In 1900, three other European botanists arrived at the same conclusion that Mendel had published 35 years earlier, and in researching the literature on the subject, they found his work. Genes are the units within sex cells, such as the sperm and egg, that transmit specific hereditary traits from one generation to the next. The study of inherited traits has become essential to anthropologists in seeking to understand human variations and differences between races. Genetics has modified the theory of progressive evolution somewhat because it has been shown by experiment that there may be genetic reversals, that is, reversions back to traits and characteristics, so to be discarded in the hereditary process. Early in the 20th century, another Austrian, a physician named Konrad Steiner, discovered the blood groups or types known as O, A, B, and AB. This led anthropologists to investigate blood differences among the races. They have noted that certain races and subtraces have particular distributions of one or another blood type. This has enabled scientists to categorize the races, and since blood types are genetically determined, to trace early migration patterns. Human migration. Although we don't think of ourselves as migratory in the way we do of other animal species, people have always been on the move. A few hundred thousand years ago, humans migrated from the savannas of Africa and spread rapidly into present-day Europe and Asia. This migration coincided with successive cycles of glacial periods known as the Ice Age, and it probably occurred as humans followed the advance and retreat of plants and animals. Humans survived the bitterly cold weather that prevailed in these regions due to their ability to make things such as shelter and clothing, but more importantly due to their ability to control fire. Later migrations to Japan, onto in Asia, and finally to Australia. They also migrated across the Bering Land Bridge into North America and spread quickly down to the southern tip of South America. Later movements brought people to the eastern part of Canadian Arctic and to northern Greenland. Human migration has not just involved taking over a new land. People have also invaded land occupied by other peoples through killing, displacing, or genetically mixing with the land's existing inhabitants. Looking at today's world, it is clear that we continue to do this. To sum up, migration seems to be a fundamental human instinct. Research. The exact method of finding archaeological sites vary, primarily because there are so many different types of sites. Some sites, such as mounds, temples, forts, roads, and ancient cities, may be easily visible on the surface of the ground. Such sites may be located by simple explanation by any individual or group going over the ground on foot, in a jeep or car, or on a horse, mule, or camel. This kind of survey can be comprehensive, that is, the entire area may be covered, or it can involve the technique of sampling. In sampling, a limited number of strategic spots in the region are checked for signs of an underlying archaeological sites. Sampling was not widely used in the United States until the passage of the Archaeological Resources Protection Act of 1979. This act, designed to protect the archaeological heritage of an area, has encouraged archaeological sampling of areas in which archaeological remains might exist that are in danger of being destroyed by construction or by the growth of cities. To some sites, that have no surface traces, archaeologists maybe use aerial photographs taken from balloons, airplanes, or satellites by cameras with remote sensors, infrared film, or other devices. The archaeologist checks these photographs for clues such as variations in soil color, ground contour, or crop density that may indicate the existence of a site. Archaeologists may simply probe the ground with sound to check for variations in the reflection of sun that would indicate the presence of structures or holes in the ground. A probe or periscope may be inserted into the ground to locate walls and trees. Mummy. It was important in the Egyptian way of life to preserve the body physically after death. The Egyptians had an elaborate notion of afterlife and felt that to take full advantage of it, the physical body must remain in existence. They took great precautions therefore in the treatment of corpses, especially of high-placed individuals, and most particularly of pharaohs. The internal organs, which decayed most easily, were removed and stored separately in stone jars. Although the heart, at the very core of life, was replaced in the body. The body was then steeped in chemicals. No secret forgotten the preservatives were involved. Common substances such as beeswax, oil, and salt were used, though the procedure could be very complicated and took up to 70 days. The body was then wrapped in bandages which were smeared with peat to make them waterproof. Foreigners who came to Egypt were also amazed at this care for corpses, for in all other lands, bodies were buried or burned or otherwise quickly disposed of. The Persians who conquered Egypt in 525 BC were among those amazed at the preserved corpses. They were most conscious of the waxy pitch with which the bandaged corpse was coated, and their word for this was mum. To the Arabs this became amir, and to us it is mummy. The word has acquired a broader meaning. Any body, animal as well as human, which has accidentally been preserved under conditions which keep the flesh reasonably intact is said to be mummified. Mummified mammals have been discovered under the Siberian ice, for instance. Introduction. Art historical research has two primary concerns. The first is 1. To discover who made a particular art object, attribution. 2. To authenticate an art object, determining whether it was indeed made by the artist to whom it is traditionally attributed. 3. To determine at what stage in a culture's development or in an artist's career the object in question was made. 4. To assess the influence of one artist on succeeding ones in the historical past. And 5. To gather biographical data on artists and documentation provenance on the previous whereabouts and ownership of particular works of art. The second primary concern of art historical research is to understand the stylistic and formal development of artistic traditions on a large scale and within a broad historical perspective. This chiefly involves enumeration and analysis of the various artistic styles, periods, movements, and schools of the past. Art history also involves iconography, which is the analysis of symbols, themes, and subject matter in the visual arts, particularly the meaning of religious symbolism in Christian art. Art historical scholarship depends greatly on the broad scholar in making broad experience, intuitive judgment, and critical sensitivity of the scholar in making correct attributions. An extensive knowledge of the historical context in which the artist lived and worked is also necessary, as well as empathy with and understanding of a particular artist's ideas, experiences, and insights. 終わり。